Hi, everyone. I'm Steven Sigmund.
And I'm Mike Messinio.
And this is the weekly movie Throwdown, where each week we take two films that have something in common and talk through them to see which one is better. This week, it's a throwdown between films about men with kind of a career crisis, I guess, and perhaps a life crisis in the broader picture. From 1996, it's Jerry Maguire going up against Chef from 2014. I initially called this like a midlife crisis throwdown, but it turns out Tom Cruise was like 35 when they filmed Jerry Maguire.
Right.
So
Jerry Maguire's character is like 35, which is why Tom Hanks was too old to do it, which is something I learned when I was looking into this.
Wow.
That it was written with Tom Hanks in mind, that he was involved. And it took about 4 years to write it. And in that time, he had won 2 Oscars. And then he also decided that he wanted to direct. So he ended up doing That Thing You Do instead of being in Jerry Maguire.
Oh.
As he realized he was a little too old as well, because he'd hit 40 and the character was still 35. So that's how Tom Cruise kind of swooped in and took it.
Interesting.
Yeah. When you think about it, think about the movie through the prism of like Tom Hanks starring in it, and you get some really interesting thoughts, because there's certain scenes that Tom Hanks just could not have done.
Yeah.
And scenes you can't imagine Tom Cruise doing now. But back then, he was kind of up for anything. So
yeah, like the sex scenes.
Right. I mean, that one certainly in particular. Yeah, that's just something.
Jesus.
If Tom Hanks would have done that, I think the whole world would have collapsed. But
well, even seeing Tom Cruise do them is like really weird.
It was, but I mean, but this was a part where he was doing crazy things. He did Interview with the Vampire. He did this. He did Eyes Wide Shut. So he was feeling his oats in the 90s.
Yeah, I have a lot more to say about this Tom Cruise era. We're going to get to that, but before we do, any wins of the week to share with us this week?
A couple wins of the week. I watched a documentary about Alan Pakula. Director of All President's Men and Parallax View. I mean, I knew his movies, didn't know much about him. I also didn't know how he died, which is insane. He actually died on Long Island in a freak car accident, which is just nuts. He's only 70 years old. But watching the documentary, he's a fascinating person, actually. A really good director, but I think the reason he was a great director is because he was just a really interesting human being, really interested in the psychology of people and what it means, and was... But the amount of people in the documentary talking glowingly about him, everyone from Harrison Ford to Meryl Streep and Brian Dennehy, who I rarely see doing interviews at all. They really loved him and thought he was really one of the most genuine human beings in all of Hollywood. Made me appreciate his work even more. Made me want to go back and watch more of his movies again and just appreciate someone like that working in Hollywood. I mean, he's been gone over 20 years now. But, most famously, we did Sophie's Choice with Meryl Streep. That was him. And she credits him a lot with helping her find that role. Although he says that the minute he saw her, he knew that there was magic, like basically that she was magic, that he found something. But anyway, yeah, it was a really good documentary. It's on HBO Max. I recommend it. It was a nice portrait. The other thing, I don't necessarily have a win of the week, but I have a winner of the week, who is George Hamilton, who I just happened to read something randomly that people were sending him well wishes because he turned 87 this week, and he posted a photo and he thanked people for wishing him well. And let me just say, we all should live to be 87 and look as good as George Hamilton while doing it. I mean, good God, the man is still perfectly tanned. It's beautiful. I mean, it's amazing.
So he's still tanned, but he hasn't gone leathery like Magda in There's Something About Mary.
Right. Yeah. Wow. I got to figure out how he's tanning, because it's still a golden glow. Let me tell you, it is something to behold. He looks really healthy. 87. I'm impressed.
Good for him.
Yeah. It's interesting because people like you and me, I mean, we caught the tail end of his career. Kind of. But really, by the time we were around, he was only known as being George Hamilton. Like, he would show up on things. And it was more like he had become a personality as opposed to an actor. And that's pretty much how he's lived the last 40 years of his life, which is really amazing when you think about it. So, yeah, I'm just kind of fascinated by George Hamilton and his beautiful golden glow. Anyway,
Yeah, I mean, all that vitamin D, I guess, is the key to longevity.
I don't know. I don't even know what to make of it. I don't know how he doesn't have skin cancer. I guess he must do it in a tanning bed or something. I don't know what he's doing, but it's a sight to
Yeah,
behold.
good to know. That's aspirational. I always love
100%.
seeing people in their 80s being young and healthy seeming. It gives me hope. All right, I have three quick wins of the week. I'll just rattle them off. Number one, friend of the show and friend to me, my wife Laura, uh, big student of Joseph Campbell, The Hero's Journey, Man of a Thousand Faces. Her writing is sort of inspired by and informed by Joseph Campbell. This week, she got to be a guest on the Joseph Campbell Foundation's podcast, the podcast with a thousand faces, which is just like a huge deal for her. So I wanted to point that out because it's very cool. Not a lot of people get to go on here. Other guests were like Andrew McCarthy, Paul Williams is going to be on because Laura hooked it up. So she's amongst some pretty interesting people. Just really happy for her. So people should go listen to that because it's a great interview. Number two is I saw the end of Oak Street yesterday, which is the new film by David Robert Mitchell. I had no preconceived notions about what I was going to think of it going in. I knew there were dinosaurs. I knew it was Anne Hathaway and Ewan McGregor. I really loved it. Despite the fact that it's produced by J.J. Abrams and it has like all the hallmarks of the Spielberg films filtered through J.J. Abrams, with the sweeping score at the beginning, the family with divorce looming, all of that stuff set in 1982. But it was just really fun, and it flew by. Great performances in it from Anne Hathaway, Ewan McGregor, and the kids. I got a lot of anxiety watching it because I'm not giving anything away where, they basically go back to like the Jurassic time and it's they have to make their way out of dinosaur world. And the anxiety of being a small dinosaur and never having a moment to just relax is super frustrating because they could just find a flower to eat and then a bigger dinosaur comes along, eats them. Like you can never let your guard down as a little dinosaur. So it's very stressful to watch. I imagine squirrels go through this too. Like that's why they're always super
That's why they look so
energetic.
paranoid. Yeah.
Yeah, but just a really fun film, and I think it's poised to make something close to 50 million opening weekend. So people are really receiving it well. I think the budget was like $80 million, so that has a way to go. But so far, so good for it. And I didn't know what to expect because I really loved It Follows from David Robert Mitchell, but I didn't love Under the Silver Lake, so I didn't know which one I was going to get. And it's kind of a blend of the best of both of those, plus Spielberg on top of it. So really fun. Definitely recommend seeing it at a theater because it's just big and loud and sweeping. So highly recommend. My third thing, you mentioned it before the show. This is sort of an aspirational one of the week. Trying to manifest it. I really want Lanterns, which premieres on Sunday, to be good. I'm very, very excited for that show as a big fan of the Green Lantern back when I was a kid. It's Kyle Chandler, Aaron Pierre, who we talked about with Rebel Ridge, and I watch CNN a lot, so it's been serving me those Warner Brothers commercials. And I don't know. I know you're excited for it too, right?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Although I was never really a Green Lantern fan. I always thought Green Lantern was like the super lamest member of the Justice League. That's just my opinion.
I would say Green Arrow is even more lame.
At least the Green Arrow has arrows. He's still like Batman
Uh,
adjacent. I mean, you just have a ring that does stuff. I don't know. It feels
cool,
it
man.
feels a little.
Super jewelry. What's better than
Yeah,
that?
I guess. I've always been 50-50 on it.
Well, regardless of where you stand with Green Lantern, I think Kyle Chandler in this role is going to be awesome.
Yeah,
We
I think
talked
it's
about
great.
him
I mean, the
with
casting's
Game Night.
great, and talking about really, I mean, a superhero adjacent buddy cop movie almost, which is great. The look of
Yeah.
it seems like it could be a lot of fun and a more down to earth idea. I feel about space. That's the other thing about Green Lantern, too much space. So it's like keep it on the
Yeah.
ground, a little less fantasy, a little more like grounded and kind of grappling with the power of the rings and all that. That is a premise that I can get behind.
Yeah, I think it's going to be good. The tone seems a little darker than the other stuff that we've seen from the James Gunn DC universe. Although Guy Gardner's in it from Superman, so I don't know if he's going to bring that Nathan Fillion comedic energy
He's gonna have to,
into.
because that is the character. I mean, there's
Yeah,
nothing redeeming about Guy Gardner really, so that's
right.
just how it's gonna be.
I just hope that it doesn't derail the tone of the show because it seems far more serious than whatever he's bringing. So we'll see. I just am really crossing my fingers for it. It could be that I'm like programmed to want this because I've seen that commercial over like 20 times a day at least. So I, these victims are going to turn out to be alien. That's Kyle Chandler's line that I've heard 1,000 times. So yeah, fingers crossed for Lanterns. All right, that's it for wins of the week. Let's get into our conversation. It's going to be Jerry Maguire and Chef. So why this throwdown? We kind of hammered this one out together, and you brought Chef in the beginning, and I was like, hell yes, because
I
it's one
did
of my
bring
favorite
Chef, but I feel
films.
like it was because you subliminally had fed it to me for months. Maybe that's why. Like it was
Oh,
in my head because of you, but it came out. So
well, then my job is done because I really, really love this film, and I'm very excited to talk about it. And we were trying to figure out what to pair with it, and there are a lot of things that kind of fall in line, but it feels like Jerry Maguire, and even watching them together now, it feels even more solidified. Like Jerry Maguire is the one. I mean, it just seems like they're different crises in a way, but sort of going down the same path. So I'm really excited to talk about the two
yeah,
of
it ended up
these.
being similar in more ways than I expected. Absolutely. There's the buddy aspect of it, and there's also, I mean, a romance in both instances, except one is a romance with food and the other is a romance with a human being, but it's still the same in a way. It's kind of like discovering the love of something that's in front of you that you kind of lost sight of. So there's that. The other thing that I thought was that I hadn't really thought about until I watched them back to back is that in terms of the filmmakers and the films that they made here, even that is slightly similar in that both of them made passion movies, but they also called in a bunch of friends to make that movie with them. And that was something I didn't clock at first. But yeah, it's absolutely them using the clout that they've accumulated to call in a bunch of favors and bring in various people into their passion project.
Yeah, and they're both just so much fun to watch. It's really cool to just go back, and I mean, I just watched Chef like a week ago, so I didn't even watch it to prepare for this. But uh, I haven't seen Jerry Maguire in forever, so it was really fun to go back and see it. And what I think is at the core of both of these are two different uh, crises in a way. Where I think with Jerry Maguire, it's about finding humanity a little bit because he's in this world of sports agents that are just disconnected, really. I mean, being an agent is almost like sports to them. Like they have to win. And, what sets him off is just being opposed to that and finding the humanity in it and connecting. And he does that with Rod Tidwell. He does that with Dorothy. But I think what's at the center of Chef is rediscovering a passion and finding like what means the most to you. It's not as much about humanity as it is like joy. And the joy comes with connecting with his son. The joy comes with reconnecting with food. And both of these things really come through in the filmmaking too, in both instances. So I'm really excited to talk
And
about
both
them.
movies are set off, yeah, they both have a crisis based on, a catalyst, like someone spurs them to rethink everything that they're doing in the moment. So, that's the same thing too in the first act,
Yeah.
which spins them out.
Yeah, it's almost like in Jerry Maguire, he just it's our dear Toby Huss, who we talked about with The Invitation. He plays the hockey player,
Right.
and his kid just kind of calls Jerry out for not even having any kind of human connection to his client, and that spins him out, and he realizes the world he's in. And I think in Chef, it's a matter of Carl almost feels a little bit like Chef Slowick in The Menu, where he started on this meteoric rise, got a lot of write-ups as a young chef, and then but he kind of just fell into complacency. And there's a lot of ego in both of them too. I think Jerry's ego is very bruised when he gets kicked out of his agency, and I think Carl, his ego is bruised by the fact that he kind of settles for this like Brentwood restaurant that he's not really passionate about. And so that ego, at least in his case, sort of pushes his wife away and his son and everything. And that's what he needs to do, is put that ego aside and rediscover the things that mean something to him. And uh, I can tell you that I'm going to talk about Chef for like 3 hours because I just love this movie so much. But even before we get into that, let's just focus on Jerry Maguire. Everybody
Okay.
knows the story. You know, it's what IMDb says about it is that a sports agent has a moral epiphany and is fired for expressing it. He decides to put his new philosophy to the test as an independent agent with the only athlete who stays with him and a former colleague. Very simplified version of it. What's your take on Jerry Maguire?
So, like you, I hadn't watched this in a long time, so it was fun to revisit it. And what I felt was, even as I was watching it, I just kept feeling like there's just no reason this movie should work at all. I mean, it's just messy, and it's juggling a bunch of different ideas at the same time and trying to hold it all together. Uh, and then you get to the end of it and you're completely moved. It really pulls itself, like it's basically on the rails the entire time, and you're just waiting for it to fall off. And then by the end, it really just pulls itself together and it writes itself and comes together in a really satisfying way. Uh, so it kind of feels like a miracle almost that just really don't. I mean, the thing is, it's very Cameron Crowe as well. Uh,
Absolutely.
to me, he's on this trajectory. It starts with Say Anything, and he's writing these hard on sleeve stories. And he said he got this from his parents, is this strong optimism, this idea of just bringing goodness and optimism to the world. And he really tries to embody this in his movies. And this one is, he's really taking a step up, and he's trying to write a grand story. And going into, he spent a lot of years studying sports agents, and he really put time into writing this script. And it's actually pretty moving when you really sit with it. But it comes down to the casting as well. Like, the casting has to really be perfect to pull this off. And pulling Renee Zellweger out of nowhere. Supposedly Mira Sorvino was the person who was going to take this role and had to drop
Really?
out at the last minute. Yeah, she ended up having to drop out. And they end up kind of pulling Zellweger just out of nothing. I mean, she hadn't done anything up to this point. So, I mean, finding a fresh face who basically is the embodiment of the character itself, just someone who is fresh faced and optimistic and can really sell that. And then Cuba Gooding Jr., who had been in Boys in the Hood, who had, been really good in that, but hadn't been able to really find something to come out after it. And again, casting someone like him who wasn't the physical prototype of the role, was supposed to be a bigger guy, wide receiver. They cast someone who is small for the idea of being a wide receiver, but there's just something magic about the way that he plays that part. And he won that in the room as well. He had to go in to do a reading. They were doing a read through of the movie, and they were just looking for an actor to come in and read. They originally wanted Damon Wayans to do this part. He was like top of the list. I can only assume because of The Last Boy Scout, where he also played.
I was gonna say.
Yeah, but he couldn't do it either. But they ended up calling him in for a read, and he's just so great in the room that they just know that he's the guy. And so you have those three people to work off of, and yeah, you just kind of catch lightning in a bottle.
It really is lightning in a bottle. And I mean, since you say that about Cuba Gooding Jr. and that, his height disadvantage, it plays into the story, and that really makes it like, I don't know if they would have cast somebody else, would that be as compelling?
Right,
because
right.
that's such an important part of it, is that he has this chip on his shoulder for being like a smaller guy in the position he's in. But as you said that, I was thinking like all three of the leads in this are kind of underdogs in their worlds, where Jerry's the underdog because he leaves this like giant agency to start out on his own. Dorothy is an underdog in love, basically, because she's kind of had this experience with her husband who died, I believe, and is surrounded by these jaded divorcees who are always sort of like talking in her ear about relationships, which I think is a nice touch. Um, so yeah, they're all just really underdogs, and that's kind of what it. It's like a sports underdog story with romance in it, and so you really get like that sports vibe to it.
The sports stuff is really strong, and that's what I mean, that he's juggling a
Yeah.
lot of different things, that when it's in its sports movie mode, that stuff is really well filmed, and you feel like it's a sports movie when the sports stuff is happening. I mean, added to the fact that they got the actual Monday Night Football crew
Yeah.
to do the play by play. I mean, all of that stuff, so it makes it feel very real. But that's just a small piece of the movie, because you're right, it's not really a sports movie at all.
And then all that realism's gone when Glenn Fry is the coach of the Cardinals.
Yeah. Well, right. So about calling in favors, it's like, so Glenn Fry is cast, who Cameron Crowe was one of the early champions of the Eagles when he started as a writer, and Eagles were one of the first people he wrote about. So he has always been connected to them. He brings in Jan Wenner, who was his first boss, obviously. Jerry Cantrell
Right.
has a cameo as the copy
Yeah.
guy, the Kinko's copy guy, who they was in Singles, of course. They were a big part of that because they did the movie in Seattle.
Yeah.
And then Mark Pellington, of all people, plays the director of the commercial that Rod walks away from. And I guess, I mean, they're just connected because they both directed probably grunge music videos in the early 90s. But yeah, it's kind of fun to spot the people that Cameron Crowe's connected to in this movie.
I have to take a moment to just uh mention Mark Pellington, because he worked for MTV, basically designed the visual style of MTV from 1990 forward. And my philosophy is that he shaped the look of reality television with the real world and going forward. But that's a longer discussion. Anyway,
Hang on, we may have to have this discussion in a larger context, because one of the movies I really like to bring to the pod is Arlington Road, which one of the few movies Pellington directed, which I thought was fantastic, and it just kind of dropped off the radar completely. So we might
has that visual style.
Yeah, we might have to come back to him down the road.
Yeah, to lean into his visual style, I was just going to mention that he created a show for MTV in '91 called Buzz, had one season, and it's like an insane visual assault. And there's a documentary about it that he directed that's coming out very soon from the people I work with, Antenna Releasing, called This Is Buzz. He's doing a few kind of roadshow stops with it out in California right now, but you have to watch this documentary, because the things he got away with at MTV in 1990 are insane. And like, it's just fascinating to watch. So highly recommend This Is Buzz when it's available. But okay, sidebar over, back into the show. I just wanted to mention some of the things you said about Cameron Crowe, and that when I watched Jerry Maguire, I really noticed, because I hadn't really sat with Cameron Crowe very much in the recent past, I noticed the style that he has, like just these very wordy scripts, a lot of like two camera close-ups that I find very interesting, just a lot of cutting. And I really thought about Singles when I watched this, because the way they're made is so similar. And I actually went back and watched Elizabethtown last night, which we can talk about if we want to, because that has sort of a significance in Cameron Crowe's career.
We probably don't want to talk about it, but
nobody does.
But at the same time, I didn't hate Elizabethtown. Just to be clear, I think you
I
either like Cameron Crowe or you don't. And if you like him, you're willing to accept even his worst indulgences, which Elizabethtown kind of is. But at the same time, I didn't walk away from that movie feeling like it was one of the worst things I'd ever seen by any stretch.
Yeah, and It's true, and what I noticed about that and this and Singles, maybe Singles in a different way, but is that the our theme this week is kind of what Cameron Crowe does in to varying degrees. Like the man most of the time being upended and having some kind of crisis, usually about work, usually about life. That's what's at the core of Elizabethtown. There's like a whole group of people going through that in
Yeah.
Singles.
We bought a
Really,
zoo. We bought a zoo
we
is
bought a
literally about
zoo.
that. Yeah. I mean,
So it really seems to be his thing.
yeah, except Almost Famous, which is the one thing that's autobiographical.
Right.
But
Right.
that's the thing too. In my mind, what you see is the trajectory with him, and you look at it almost like a U-shaped thing, where he's building this style, and it culminates with Almost Famous, where Jerry Maguire being successful really allows him to fully embrace not just this style of filmmaking, this hard-on sleeve filmmaking style, but also finally embrace his own history and write autobiographical, which is what Almost Famous ends up being. And it is kind of the peak of, not spoiler alert for the end of the show, but that to me is the peak of Cameron Crowe, of where he really puts it all together. And then from that point on, it's kind of diminishing returns from that moment on. And I don't know if it's as much him as he kind of reached the peak of what his style could be, or the ground just shifted underneath him. And I mention this because Jerry Maguire talks a lot about being cynical. The fact that we live in a cynical world is mentioned more than once in the story. And Tom Cruise mentioned this in a lot of press stuff that he did as well, about the cynicism of the world. And Cameron Crowe is an antidote to that. And I wonder if the ground just shifting underneath us and things becoming even more cynical in the 2000s just created a world where Cameron Crowe's lighthearted kind of optimism just did not fly anymore, and just started to feel incredibly hokey, and it was just rejected. I don't know. That's a much larger conversation, but I do think about
it. That makes sense. I also think some of his choices, like We Bought a Zoo and Aloha, maybe aren't the best.
Aloha I've never even watched because it was just trash so much. I never got around to watching it, but I liked We Bought a Zoo as well, by the way. I actually like that movie.
I'll never watch it.
It's a fine movie.
I don't like watching any movies with animals. I just feel like it's not for me. But yeah, but that's another example of like the guy in crisis at the center, and what I think he does have that heart on his sleeve thing. But I think what differentiates these films is that Chef also wears its heart on its sleeve, and it does it from like an independent angle, whereas Cameron Crowe feels like an independent director, sort of like infiltrating the studio system. And it's bigger, it's quicker. Like it feels, because he comes from that music background, Jerry Maguire is full of like montages and quick cuts. It almost feels like a music video some of the time. And I mean, we're not to compare the two yet, but Chef really lingers on things a lot. And I kind of see that as a big difference between the two. And I think that comes from like the studio aspect of Jerry Maguire being this big film with movie stars in it, that it has to look slick. And I don't know if that takes away from it, from his heart on his sleeve, directing style and writing style. I don't know. But I do find it interesting that it still connects in a way that Chef does for me, just not as deeply. But there still is so much heart in Jerry Maguire that I really love. And
yeah, and part of it is because of the slickness of it and the fact that he's a sports agent. It's a little bit harder to connect to, that world. That's possibly what it is. But yeah, and I guess now is as good a time as any to just bring up the Tom Cruise of it all. I mean, he wanted this role. He lobbied for it, and actually went and read the entire script to James L. Brooks and Cameron Crowe to prove how much he wanted it. And I think that just says a lot about where Tom Cruise was in the 90s. I love the Tom Cruise in the 90s is a really fun thing to talk about. And what I think as I was watching Jerry Maguire, I was thinking about my theories of Tom Cruise, how I feel about him. And I told you that I didn't necessarily love the 80s Tom Cruise, that macho dick kind of thing that he was really good at in the 80s, that he'd really perfected. And what I love about Jerry Maguire is it actually is kind of like the moment, not only in the movie, but in real life, that you see Tom Cruise kind of cross over, where he starts as 80s Tom Cruise and then he just morphs into 90s and beyond Tom Cruise right in front of your eyes. Like he becomes that person that, you know, so he still has some of that 80s Tom Cruise in him that he can access for this movie, but he really has moved on from it. And as someone who didn't necessarily love his 80s movies, it was fun to see it in both personas in one movie.
That's a good way to look at it. I think he's right in the middle of the 80s and the 90s. I mean, he's still done things like Born on the 4th of July in 89 where he's doing these character parts, and for as like superficial as Jerry Maguire feels, it still feels like a character part, which is a lot of what he did in the 90s. And the first note I wrote for when watching Jerry Maguire was like, this is the Tom Cruise I want, because this, like 5 years for him is kind of the end of this era, and before he goes into like Mission Impossible 2 and all this. I mean, I know he does Vanilla Sky with Cameron Crowe again, but
but the 90s are just a great transition pivot moment for Cruise, where he's really taking chances, doing things that are very out of character for him, and then he just gives it up and decides that he's going to Mission Impossible his way through his later years and just focus on single-mindedly action stuff. And it's shocking to see him do things in this movie, like, you know, have sex on camera or even be in a romance, because one of the things I know when watching later Tom Cruise movies with my kids is I never have to worry about anything untoward, because he has, much like Stallone in the 80s, there's no time for that. He's too busy saving the world. There's no time. But here we get to see a very different version of Tom Cruise that he really stepped away from. I don't know if it was deliberate. I really don't know, but it feels that way, because after doing some pretty, I hate to use the word sexy things. Jesus, I don't know what other word to use. I just gross myself out saying that. But whatever you want to call it, there's a lot of that going on in this period. And then he really just never returns to it.
But the thing is, even in Jerry Maguire, I mean, it's perfect for the character, because the character is like lacks humanity. Like that's kind of his mission. And it turns out it's not impossible at the end of the film, which is wonderful. But sorry, he lacks this ability to connect romantically, I think. And you still feel that here. You feel it with the way he interacts with Dorothy physically. And then, you know, in Eyes Wide Shut, like that's the whole crux of the film, is that he and his wife cannot connect physically. And you just get that vibe from him, even when he's like romantic. And so it's probably better that we don't have that stuff in film with him, I think. And it also makes it ironic that in Magnolia, you know, 3 years later, his whole character, Frank T.J. Mackey, is like about this, like teaching men how to hook up with women. I guess there's no like emotional connectivity there, but it's a weird lane for Tom Cruise, romance on screen.
Yeah, it is. And at the same time, what you're saying is right. There's that sense of awkwardness, but at the same time, no one does smoldering attention better than Tom Cruise. I mean, there are a couple of scenes in this movie where I would fall in love with Tom Cruise if he looked at me that way. I mean, he has this great, and actually the original ending of the movie, which is a little bit hard to find. There's an alternate ending other than the scene on the field. The original ending is them actually taking Ray to the zoo, which they always talk about. And they're sitting on a bench. Yeah. And Jerry and Dorothy are sitting on a bench together while he's looking at giraffes. And he looks at her in a way, you know, and it's just everything. It's like all the feels in that one look. And I can see why they probably cut it out, because the scene at the end, the "You Complete Me" scene, is enough. Like that look that he gives and that feeling and that speech alone, I guess, just feels like a better way to end that. And returning to it again, where he's just kind of staring at her lovingly, I think it probably feels redundant, if I had to guess. But yeah, his longing looks that he gives her towards the end when he finally puts it together is some good acting. And he sold "You Complete Me," by the way. that what I'd heard was that Cameron Crowe never liked that line. He didn't really like it and didn't really want it in the script. He kept saying he was probably going to cut it out, because if Cameron Crowe says that something feels too sappy, that's really saying something. He thought it might be too much. But Tom Cruise was like, you need to let me do the line. Like, let me read it, let me act it, and then you can decide what you want to do. And
Right.
look, it's one of his best acting moments. He sold the shit out of that scene. There's no two ways about it. That whole delivery is really as good an acting job as you're going to get out of Tom Cruise, I think.
So I mean that's probably a big part of what got him an Oscar nomination for this film. So that scene was going to be cut.
Just
And
the
it was
last,
going
just
to
the
be
"you complete me" line. Like, the rest of it was probably going to stay in, but the actual line where he says
Oh.
"you complete me,"
Oh, okay.
Crow thought it felt like overkill and just thought it might be a little too sappy for the audience. But Tom Cruise loved it, and he was like, "You need to let me read the line. Like, just let me act out the line and see what you think."
I mean, Tom Cruise has good instincts, because two lines from that scene are in the AFI's top 100 movie
Yeah,
quotes of all
I
time.
think he knew that. I think that was the thing. I think he knew he could sell that moment, and he wanted it. He wanted a chance to be able to really emote and give you that vulnerability. And so, yeah, credit to him. He really went after it and sold it. He did.
It's so interesting to go back and watch this after like late stage Tom Cruise that we've dealt with for the last 20 years, because he's such a good actor. Even if he doesn't have that like romantic connectivity, like this emoting you're talking about, that intensity, it's so great on screen, and it's so believable, and he's funny as hell. I
Yeah.
mean, you forget how funny he is,
I don't know.
and he's also able to be uh just like have people take the piss out of him. Like, there's no ego in like Rod Tidwell talking to him about shoplifting the pootie, or any of
Yeah.
the other things that he sort of scolds him for. I mean, he really shows a vulnerability that you don't get a lot of in Mission Impossible,
I'll
or
say,
the things
well,
he does
good,
these
a good,
days.
perfect example of this is the scene where he gets fired and he's racing back to his office, and
Yeah.
he falls down. So that scene was kind of ad libbed in the moment that Cameron Crowe and Cruise were talking to each other, and he said to Cruise, he's like, "I think it might be cool if you fell here." And they didn't tell anybody else on the set. And
Oh.
and this was like the third take, and Cruise just like, he walks in and he just friggin' face plants. I mean, he throws himself on the ground. I mean, you see, it's actually kind of a hard fall. And everyone around just kind of gasps because they didn't know it was coming, and he really gets after it and takes that fall, and then, gets up and dusts himself off. But it's another good example of how he's willing to take the piss out of himself. I mean, going forward, I don't think he would ever allow that to happen as he's saving the world. But yeah, he was more than happy to make himself look silly in that moment too.
I just love that vulnerability and that willingness to look. There's this there's this TED talk that goes around from Ethan Hawke, where he talks about like leaning into creativity and not being afraid to play the fool in order to explore your creativity, and that's what Tom Cruise does. Like, he plays the fool, and it's okay if he looks bad, because that serves the character and that serves the role, and that vulnerability is what makes this performance great, because you just aren't used to that anymore. And it's really, really fun to watch, and I hope we're getting back to that now. I think Digger, man, I don't know what to make of Digger.
I don't, me neither. That movie is going to be something. I don't know what to make of it. But I'm excited to
just
see it. I
feels-
really am. I'm excited to see what it is.
Absolutely.
One other thing I have to say about 80s versus 90s Tom Cruise. Don't you get the impression that Jay Moore was basically just playing 80s Tom Cruise? You think he just went back and watched like old Tom Cruise movies? I'm like, I got it. I can
Yeah.
do that. That's what, like, he was just giving himself back to himself. But I'm reading too much into it. I don't know.
He's such a weird guy. I don't. I mean, I don't like mean to disrespect him or anything, but he just feels like a little kid all the time, even when he's trying to play like tough Bob Sugar. Like, he just feels like a child to me, and not suited for that role, in my opinion. I don't know.
Well, maybe that's the point, though, because he did. You mention that he was Jerry Maguire's protege, so maybe you're supposed to get that vibe from him that he really is a kid who just doesn't have any business firing Jerry Maguire, but that's what he's empowered to do.
It's just like Kevin Hart's assistant in Central Intelligence got the promotion over him.
That's right. That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, we're definitely getting a through line through August, which is men in crisis, but also feel good August. It's all at the end. They're all kind of feel good movies.
Yeah,
strange.
They are.
That's not what we're doing next week, but that's where we are the first 2 weeks.
It's what we need right now, I think, in this dark time.
Look, feel good August is definitely something I can get behind. Statham August, Statham January and feel good August. I can get behind both of those things.
We're slowly filling in the calendar.
Yeah.
10 more years, we'll have it full. Man, that's a crazy thought. Yeah, because you mentioned Renee Zellweger being sort of plucked out of obscurity for this, she is such a delight in this film. Just absolutely lovely and charming. I can see why America just kind of fell in love with her off of this, because I'd forgotten, just how good she is in this. And there's this interesting thing where she's sort of lit with like a halo all the time. I don't know if you noticed that, but there's sort of this backlighting, like a rim light that makes her glow in a way that nobody else in the film is lit that way. And it's really interesting, but she's just really, really delightful.
Well, I will just say this, speaking of Renee Zellweger, I think it's very rare that an actor can completely surprise you multiple times in a career. And I think that she's done it at least 3 times, to my knowledge. She has done things at least 3 times where you've been completely stunned by her level of talent. The first thing is here, because you really didn't know who she was. She made some B-horror movies, and she's in this role. And you're right, she really glows. There's just something magnetic about her. And then when I saw Chicago for the first time, it was just something that I completely did not expect. I had no idea that she had that much talent in terms of singing and dancing. It's just something that I completely didn't expect. And when she was first cast in the role, I was shocked that she was even cast in the first place. And then I watched the movie and I was stunned at how great she was in that movie. And then the role that she finally won the Oscar for, where she plays Judy Garland, again, is just, even though you knew she could sing and dance, there was something about that part, about her embodying Judy Garland, that felt wholly unexpected to me. It's really something to see an actor continue to surprise you, and she has consistently done that.
I don't think I really paid attention to her the first time I saw it, and I haven't seen it a lot, so it's a nice revelation.
Yeah. And just real quick, I guess we could talk about this later. We'll talk about career peaks, but I have to say really quick that unlike Nick Cage, who used his Oscar to springboard into something else, I've never seen someone use an Oscar to springboard into so little.
Yeah.
It's just shocking, the choices that Cuba Gooding Jr. made after Jerry Maguire. And look, they could have been his choices, or they could have been what he was offered. And we can get into a whole conversation about all of the great black filmmakers that got screwed in the 90s that never got a chance to follow up on their great first and second films. We can discuss that. I have no idea if that played a part in anything in Cuba Gooding Jr.'s career. Don't know. But the movies he makes after Jerry Maguire, well, a few years after, we'll say starting with Snow Dogs, it's just shocking how...
Kind of infamous.
Yeah. I really will never be able to figure it out, how he didn't get better roles.
Yeah. He's, his character here is so interesting, because it almost feels like so I just have a few quibbles with the script here. I love the script, but when we get into the comparison, what I think here is like, in Chef, the relationship is between Carl and his son Percy, and you see them go on that journey, and the Hollywood standard for that's going on in Jerry Maguire is like the romance. And what's frustrating is that the romance feels like it never really happens. Like the romance is more between Rod and Jerry than it is Jerry and Dorothy, because I think Jerry's trajectory is to find humanity and connectivity with people. And he definitely does that with Rod. But what really frustrated me is that the way he connects with Dorothy at the end in that beautiful scene where he emotes that we talked about in the living room is that he already does the thing and he comes back and tells her it kind of sucked because she wasn't there. Like she wasn't a part of it, really. I mean, she's always just kind of staying at home and like watching the kid or doing the office work while he's out like having, this emotional epiphany and doing the work that he needs to do. So that really frustrated me about it. And I think that's a big difference between the two films, is that you go on that journey with Carl and Percy, but here Renee Zellweger's sort of like just left at home while Jerry and Rod go out and do all the cool stuff.
Well, here's something
And
I
that
hadn't thought about, so
frustrated
you
me.
just mentioned it, but isn't Chef very similar? Because the underlying through line with that is his reconciliation with his ex-wife, which is kind of also done through the kid. And she's also in the background throughout most of the movie, and then they end up together again, even though they'd already been previously married. But that feels like an afterthought as well. You kind of know what's coming, but they don't give a lot of time to that either in that movie, if you think about it.
I I do think there are issues with that script too, but for me, that journey is more of an internal journey, and finding the validation in like the things that mean something, which are rediscovering the passion for your craft in addition to family. But the Jerry Maguire thing feels more external, where like this success doesn't matter if you don't have someone to share it with, is ultimately like his revelation at the end. So that's almost about like an external thing. I get, maybe I'm wrong, but that's the way I see it. Is
There's no wrong here. It's just however you read it is fine. But that's it's interesting because that's how I felt about Chef at the end of it, where it felt like that was tacked on to give you a nice buttoned up conclusion. But I wasn't 100% it felt earned because we didn't really get the reconciliation between them that we might have needed. But that would have made it a much longer movie that required a lot of unpacking of stuff that we didn't even really get to see in the first place.
yeah, I don't necessarily see it. I mean, she seems secondary to me. To me, it's about a father and a son reconnecting. I mean, they do such a good job of building like the two never get to do anything together, and when he picks the kid up every week, they like he'll leave him at the restaurant with Molly, or you can't go with me today. So I think it's more about rebuilding that. And then yeah, there's like a foundation with Inez that kind of comes in and out during the film, but I don't know, it's a nice ending. You could almost do without her ultimately, I think.
Sure.
But in Jerry Maguire, Dorothy is like central to his like revelation that he needs to share something with someone in the world, because his relationship with Avery, Kelly Preston's character, is like they're two athletes almost who are so focused on what they do that it doesn't matter. And when the success of that singular journey goes away, like the union doesn't work anymore. I don't know.
Yeah, that's completely plausible. That is fair. Um,
I will say that less of Sofia Vergara's voice is better for me, because it's really a lot for my ears. She's great, but I don't like listening to her talk. Okay, I did want to mention Jonathan Lipnicki, who this will be a career peak 100% at the end of the show, because I don't know anything else he's done.
supposedly he's an MMA fighter now or something.
What?
He has like a black belt in. Yeah. It's quite the
That's
trajectory.
amazing.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I
That
went deep on Jerry Maguire facts, so I learned that as I was reading up on things.
wow.
Yeah.
Well, then you would know that the human head weighs 8 pounds thing, like he brought to the script
Yes.
as a
I do.
child.
Although that's not even true. It actually weighs like 10 or 11 pounds, but that's his own.
Oh. Yeah, it's cute. It's cute for the
Afternoon
show.
anyway, which is fair.
The other thing that I find fun about him is that the first scene where he and Tom Cruise are in the living room is all ad-libbed. So they made that up and not in the script at all. So fucking Zoo's closed ray was made up on the spot, which I love.
Wow.
It's what a bold move to, and that speaks to Tom Cruise too, right? Like you put him in a room with a child and give them nothing to do and have them make it up on the spot, and he has to react to a child. That's awesome. It's really fun. Okay, anything else you want to talk about before we get wholly into Chef?
Let's just shout out Bonnie Hunt really quick, who this just kind of adds to a lot of under the radar good work that Bonnie Hunt did in the 90s and
Yeah.
early 2000s. It's just a person you can rely on to read great acerbic lines. Just kind of
Yeah.
like cutting sarcastic type readings. She's just very good at it. And also
Yeah.
one of the better lines in Jerry Maguire is also ad-libbed by her. Where she's sending
one?
Dorothy off to the date, and she says, "Don't cry at the beginning of dates. Cry at the end like I do." That last line was made up by her, and Cameron Crowe actually scolded her and said to please stick to the scripted lines. And the next day they watched it in dailies, and that line just blew up the room. And he went and apologized to her and said, "You know what? You can say whatever you want to say. It's fine." But that was pretty fun story.
She comes from an improv background.
That's why she's good at it. But he spent 4 years writing that script, and I think he was just so precious about it that he got angry that someone actually tried to change his lines. But she was right.
Apparently, she told Tom Cruise that they had worked together in Rain Man, and he had no recollection of her, so he felt really bad about it.
I mean, I have no recollection of her in Rain Man either, so I can't necessarily fault him for that.
Yeah. Before we move on, also want to mention Todd Luiso, who plays Chad the nanny.
Right.
I kept he made such an impression on me in the show Phenom. Did you ever watch that show about the tennis girl? So it was a sitcom in the 90s where he was the older brother. I forget who played the Phenom, but she was like a Monica Seles type or like more like a Jennifer Capriati type, too. Just like a really young tennis player. And it was like a single mother had to deal with this kid being, on like the pro tennis circuit or something. And Ashley Johnson, who was on Growing Pains, was the younger sister. So it was just, I don't know why that show made such an impression on me, but I really liked it. And he was like the reason. So seeing him here and, he's in, Empire, is it? No, not Empire Records. What's the John Cusack one? High Fidelity. He's in that.
Right.
And he directed a really great little film called Love Liza in the early 2000s that stars Philip Seymour Hoffman and was written by Phil's brother. So highly recommend that. He's just someone who pops up and I really like seeing him. So shout out to Todd Luiso. All right, do you want to move on to Chef? All right, so this is from 2014, written and directed by Jon Favreau. Story is Chef Carl Casper faces a career crisis, and when he does, he hits the road to find his passion for cooking. As I said, I just absolutely adore this film. It's up there with The Rookie for me, which we covered on the show before, the Dennis Quaid sports underdog film where a middle-aged man becomes a professional pitcher. I don't know why these films resonate with me so much, but I just love everything about this film. The way it's shot, like it lingers a lot more than Jerry Maguire. That's kind of the thing about it that I like is that it's really a road film that goes from like location to location. But when you're in those locations, you really sit in it. And there's just, it just has so much heart to it in a more independent way than Jerry Maguire does. And I really, I love food. I love watching food being made. So this really is like, it just checks all the boxes for me. So what are your,
here's the main question though. Did it make you want to eat barbecue just a little?
Well, it's interesting you say that because, we'll talk about the cultural imprint of this, but all of these recipes that they make in this film are online. So I have gone through and veganized all of them. And So this film really is like means a lot to me, and the food is a big part of it. So I fancy myself a pretty decent cook, and I love veganizing things. So yeah, I mean,
Then I'm gonna come over. You can
absolutely.
make me that pasta dish because that looked pretty good.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, that's like in my rotation now. So happy to do it.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts on Chef?
Yeah, I really like it. It's a really enjoyable movie, and I love the story behind it even more. I like that it's very autobiographical for Favreau as well, where he's almost has to step back and rediscover his love of filmmaking, and he's using cooking as a vehicle almost to speak to himself and remind himself of what he loved about making movies in the first place. Uh, Unconnected, I randomly caught Swingers on cable the week before we decided to do this, and
Oh
and
yeah.
and so I rewatched Swingers, which I hadn't seen in a very, very long time, and was shocked at how thin everybody was. That was the first thing that jumps out
Yeah.
when you're watching Swingers. Uh, but yeah, it was really great to see Favreau go back to that. Just a very unpolished, on the fly kind of personal filmmaking that I think he's really good at, and I'm pretty sad that he moved so far away from it, and hope that a film like Chef will return again at some point.
That's absolutely my take on it too. I mean, he wrote this in like 2 weeks, and then I don't know how long he took to film it, but it was very quick. And yeah, I mean, he's so interesting because he's gone from that independent cred, like Swingers you mentioned, was huge in the 90s. I know
Huge.
he didn't direct it, but he wrote it
Right.
and he stars in it, and it's yeah, it's
I think that
monumental. And
people
then
will look back, even now, if they look back and see not only how big Swingers was, but how big that whole jump swing craze was in the 90s,
yeah,
they might just think it was like a mass hallucination. It was big, it was everywhere. It was really something.
yeah, Big Bad Voodoo Daddy.
Yeah.
Oh,
I definitely have
wow.
a Big Bad Voodoo Daddy CD in my collection somewhere.
Really?
100%.
I do not.
It's fine.
But yeah, I mean, he started there and he went on to do Made. Like he and Vince Vaughn were the guys for a while. Like they were just the two guys. And then eventually he gets to Iron Man and directs Iron Man 1 and 2. Goes on to make Cowboys and Aliens, which was
Well, let's just linger there for 1 second,
questionable.
because that's the thing I think that made Iron Man so good is that it felt like a scrappy underdog superhero movie, a B tier superhero, and even the beginning of it is kind of a junky costume, and it's about him becoming a bigger superhero. But there's certainly, I don't want to say an indie feel because it's not really, but there is a scrappy feel to that movie, almost watching him discover what he can do in real time and watching him level up, which is exciting to see. It's a good movie and it's exciting to watch him do it. And we all saw Iron Man 2 did not have the same magic. And then we see Cowboys and Aliens, which really just doesn't work. Although you could argue that Cowboys and Aliens almost set the template for action movies going forward, even though it was unsuccessful. Like I hate to say it, but I think in that's probably why so many movies that come out now aren't very good. But that giant tentpole kind of mashing of genres and
Yeah.
that may have failed, but the idea of it has lingered for years and years and years.
It did succeed in putting Olivia Wilde on the big screen. It was very early for her in like bigger film performances, so I'm grateful for that.
Yeah, just think you made a
But
movie with Cowboys and Aliens with Indiana Jones and James Bond in the same movie and have it not even be good, like
yeah,
barely watchable. It's actually quite a feat, honestly.
I mean, Daniel Craig as a cowboy is like, I love the idea of aliens in the Old West, but Daniel Craig as a cowboy just doesn't sell it for me. It's not good.
Fair.
But in Iron Man, it's important because this starts all of it. I mean, everything we have up until Spider-Man Brand New Day is because of Iron Man and Jon Favreau. And the idea of casting a character actor like Robert Downey Jr. as the lead of a tentpole film is kind of unheard of, in 2008. So for him to do that This movie's a game changer,
especially
and
with
this
all the red
guy,
flags that Robert Downey Jr. had
yeah,
at the time as well. So, and that's why it
exactly.
was fun to see Robert Downey Jr. pop up in this movie. And we have to say, that is one of my favorite things about Robert Downey Jr. I don't know him as a person, obviously, but he has proven to be loyal to the people that helped him along the way, which is why he ends up in, helping Shane Black with Iron
Right.
Man 3, and why he ends up in Chef, because he does remember the people that took a chance on him when other people wouldn't, and he remembers, and he pays it back, and that's a cool thing to see.
Even though that scene is so
A hundred
maybe my
percent ad
least
libbed.
favorite scene.
There's no
Yeah,
way that any of that was written. I just think he's like, I'll do it, but I want to be able to say whatever I want. That certainly feels like that's
yeah.
what's going on in that scene.
It it's oddly edited. The dialogue. I mean, by design, the dialogue, whether that's up to him or Favreau, I don't know, but it is between two conversations that come together, and I think it's smart, but it's a little disorienting, which I guess is like the reason for it on his behalf, but very funny. But yeah, so Chef, coming off of these Marvel films and Cowboys and Aliens, uh, you know, Favreau is very much Chef Carl Casper. Maybe he had to take a step back and reevaluate and find that passion again. And that's what you see in this film. You see it in the filmmaking, you see it in his performance. I mean, Roy Choi, who founded the Kogi truck in LA, I mean, just highly famous chef. He came on as a producer and like a consultant for the food, basically sent Favreau to like a French culinary school for 2 weeks to learn how to do all this stuff. And he said he'd only come on and supervise if Favreau like put his heart into it. And you really see that. And you see it beyond the film because the chef brand and what they do really carries on. We'll talk about that more later.
Yeah.
But it's a passion project, and you just feel it. You feel so much of that passion. Like Favreau and Carl Casper are just so analogous. And I think that authenticity is what really connects me to it, is that it's really a guy like looking for that creative fire again. And I love a story like
Yeah,
that. Because I'm always doing
and
it.
it's a direct line, because yeah, what you saw with Iron Man 2, what he started getting the feeling was, as opposed to Iron Man 1, was now you're getting Marvel Studio notes because they have to move the storyline forward. So you're
Yeah,
pigeonholing, or you're trying to jam things into your movie to fit the larger narrative, which I don't think
right.
he loved. And then, of course, in Cowboys and Aliens, you can only imagine all the studio notes you're getting because you're trying to make a tentpole summer movie. And I think he just exhausted him, much like exactly like in Chef, where the guy that owns the restaurant is telling him, this is the menu you have to make. You're not allowed to stray from it. And so, yeah, it's really refreshing to see him just say, how much money can I get to make a movie with absolutely no interference from anybody? And they told him $11 million, and that is exactly what he made Chef for, so that he could make the movie he wanted without anybody bothering him.
Yeah, and it did pretty well. It ended up making 50 million. So it started out on like 10 screens. It debuted at South by Southwest and went, I think, to Sundance. And from 10 screens to almost 2,000. Like it really had its moment, and I think it's because it's such a relatable story. It has family. It has like the creative pursuit. It just has this like sort of midlife crisis to it that he might not even be at midlife when he made it, but everybody goes through that, I think. And it just like in Jerry Maguire, but I feel like this is so intimate in that you're in this truck all the time,
Yes,
like
it is.
basically in a box with your son. Like, so speaking of that, like what did it make you feel, like the father son storyline to it? Like, is it, I'm not a dad, so I can't speak to this.
So really, what it made me feel is that I I should have taken my kids to New Orleans. That's what it made me feel. Because I have been to New Orleans, but they have not, and it made me think I should take them to New Orleans. That would be
Yeah.
fun. But yeah, absolutely. It's hard not to think about your own relationship with your kids as you're watching something like this. But at the same time, uh, I wasn't necessarily an absentee parent, so to speak. So
Right.
I almost think I'd rather go on a road trip alone at this point, based on my
Yeah.
feel it. my, get in a van and go somewhere.
Yeah.
But no, it's nice because it's true. You're trying to impart your passion for things into your kids, and you're trying to also impart goodness. And there is something of that. It's very easy to have something like that resonate with you as you're watching this movie.
I do think some of it is a little convenient, like
Of course,
a little too easy with how things work out. So, yeah, I mean, I think Favreau is a great writer, like an exceptional writer. But the fact that he wrote this in 2 weeks and it almost feels like the opposite of Cameron Crowe. Not too precious about it, wrote it quickly, just like
sure, it's
run and
super
gun with
convenient
it.
that his kid just happens to be a social media genius.
Yeah,
Here's the thing: what was fun to go back and watch with Chef is to watch a movie that is about social media when social media is in its infancy,
yeah,
and how magical it felt, how fresh it was, and all of the repercussions of using it in a nice little storyline. Because social media plays a large part in this movie, which I had forgotten about,
yeah.
and it made me nostalgic for a time where you could just kind of do something dumb, but it wasn't necessarily as horribly toxic as it is now, or as
Yeah.
professionalized. All of these things, like it feels it's just very corporate. Everybody's using it to get ahead, and or they're using it for just pass along toxic ideologies. And back here, you could be innocent about posting something that you think you're posting to someone privately, and then have it go viral. And yeah, just watching that whole thing transpire made me nostalgic for a time where something like that felt fresh and funny.
Those halcyon days when Twitter was actually Twitter and not
Yeah,
X. Yeah.
right.
But I'm glad you mentioned that because it's such an important part of the story. You know, Chef Carl has no idea what he's doing on social media, but Percy does. And I think that's like a great commentary of like the older generation doesn't get technology, but the younger generation does. And as Carl goes on this journey to rediscover himself, what I think is so beautiful about it is that he wouldn't do that if his son weren't helping him. So the fact that his son is basically like the facilitator of him rediscovering himself is such a beautiful thing to me. And that's where like the whole crux of the film is the two of them coming together, and they do that through like not only Percy learning to have a passion for what his dad has a passion for, but Percy like contributing in his own way to help. And so they really do it together. And that's a big thing that I think is missing in Jerry Maguire is that you don't get the sense that Dorothy is doing it with Jerry as much.
That's a great point. Well, we have to talk about John Leguizamo, who's really the the third main character of the movie, and it's another
Yeah.
thing with him where his performances are wildly from one pole to the other. I think he's a very versatile, talented guy. So he'll almost Robin Williams esque in a way where he can go from one pole to the other, and it's not always
Yeah.
great, but he's so natural in this movie, and you get a feel that this is very much the relationship that they would have in real life. At least that's the way they're portraying it. But supposedly a lot of stuff in the truck was ad libbed as well. Is they're making food because they wanted them to get the feel of what a kitchen would be like, and
Yeah.
seeing John Leguizamo in just a natural environment, just riffing and kind of being a regular guy is very charming. I mean, I really enjoyed him in this movie.
I agree 100%. And it really feels like the polar end of the spectrum from his performance from The Menu a few weeks ago. I mean, he is natural. And I mean, look, if you write a script in 2 weeks, you're going to have to ad lib. Like that's just the way it is. And what you mentioned in The Menu that some of his stuff was ad libbed, but it felt a lot more stilted than this. This just felt like a more comfortable environment for him or something. And he is so good as Martin. And not only is he so good at Martin, but I think like all of them together, I've worked in kitchens and I think that kitchen vibe. It's not the bear, but I think that camaraderie and like just that sense of team and loyalty is authentic. And you really get that here. I mean, he gives up a job as a sous chef in Brentwood to
Yeah,
go work for free on a taco truck.
right.
Like that commitment is incredible.
Since you mentioned the bear, though, I will say that I don't realize how important the bear really was until I've gone back and rewatched show like movies about food and
Yeah.
realized how the bear informs almost everything about the way I think about kitchens and food
Yeah.
now. It yeah, everything about that show just stays with me as I watch anything. Um, so yeah, I just had to say that.
Yeah. I mean, it feels authentic, but with like, you know, the real kitchen isn't edited that quickly to make it that like anxious, but it's intense. I mean, and you get a sense of that here a little bit with the scene where uh Ramsey Michelle, the critic played by Oliver Platt, comes back to the restaurant because Carl's not there. And so you see Bobby Cannavale, who's Tony in this, is like excellent. He and Martin get in the weeds. That's what they say in the kitchen. You're in the weeds when all the tickets are coming in, and so you get to see how it functions when Carl's not there. But that scene where Carl does come back and confront the critic is played by Oliver Platt, like beautifully. That stuff was not in the script because they wanted authentic reactions from the cast. So that whole back and forth where he's shouting at Ramsey Michelle is like all improv. And you can, if you watch Dustin Hoffman, you can see that he's really trying hard not to laugh because those are just genuine moments of like reaction that to something they had no idea was going to happen.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, that is just super smart.
Yeah, going off on a rant about molten lava cake is certainly entertaining.
Yeah, that's like one of the most basic dishes. They apparently Roy Choi polled a bunch of chefs and they're like, what's the most basic stuff that's like expensive? And that's something that every restaurant has essentially. So it's like the least inspired thing you can make, which I think is like the point of that menu because it shows that Carl lost his passion because he's sort of working for this like corporate overlord in a way and there's no ingenuity to it anymore. The Dustin Hoffman of it all is very interesting because I don't like if there's a flaw in the script for me, it's kind of his flip flopping or, the first night he's all about pleasing this critic and then he gets a bad review. And the next night, Carl wants to really please the critic. And suddenly the Riva character just doesn't care about the critic. He's like, we don't have a restaurant full of critics. So I found that flip flop to be a little weird in the script to me. I don't know, but maybe he's playing it safe.
Because yeah, I think it makes him want to play it safe and stick to the packed restaurant that he has and cater to those people. It's hard to know how people respond to fear.
Yeah.
And I think if it's your money
Yeah.
on the line, you're probably going to react a little more cautiously. But I will say, Dustin Hoffman's late stage cantankerous old man phase is great. We need more of it. We need more
Yeah.
old Dustin Hoffman in movies because every time I see him, I like him more.
Yeah. He just really is agitated all the time.
It's really good.
It's really fun to watch. And then, of course, continuing with the cameos, Scarlett Johansson plays Molly. This is fresh off of Iron Man 2, so they have that relationship. And I don't really remember this, but there's a scene where Carl and Percy go to the movies. Like that's the one time where it moves quickly because you're showing that their time together is like almost an inconvenience for Carl. And that's why the relationship is so fractured. But there's a moment where they're shown in a movie theater and it's actually Iron Man on the screen, which I kind of love. I didn't know that until I read about it.
I didn't catch that. That's funny.
But I think that's an interesting look at the pacing too, where everything is slow, especially the cooking scenes, and when Carl leaves the restaurant and goes home and cooks what he was going to cook for Ramsey Michelle, it's like, it's just luscious. I mean, the soundtrack is White Lines, which I really love, but all of the cooking is shot with such like care and slowness and just focus. But then when you see him with Percy at the beginning of the film, everything's like super quick chops. So it shows you what's important to him, and I just think that's like a nice visual language that you see throughout the film, because that kind of goes away later on. That those quick cuts, and they're really lingering on the two of them together. So
Yeah.
I just really like
Well, yeah,
that.
because midway through the movie, their story changes as well, so everything becomes slower. Right.
It's just so beautiful. I
Yeah, we
can't say
both
enough good
watch
things about
food
it.
shows. I'm a sucker for a good food show, and I'm a sucker for a good road trip movie. So I mean, it's hard not to like this movie.
Yeah, I think Jerry Maguire puts the sports underdog story into a romance, and this kind of puts the road movie plus a cooking movie into a different kind of romance between a father and son, and I
Yeah,
think it's really
and I didn't think
beautiful.
about this till you just brought it up, but there is a lot of travel in Jerry Maguire as well. But it's
Yeah,
all solo and it's all isolated and it's all on planes. It's very anonymous and cold,
yeah,
and with the exact opposite of this here, where it's very intimate and uh, there's a camaraderie to what they're doing together.
yeah. It's it's just so lovely. I bet when I go to Letterbox at the end of the year, it shows you which films you've watched the most. 100% going to be Chef. That's in my top 3 every year, because
I would
it's
never put that on Letterboxd, the movies I've watched most, because I probably wouldn't want everyone to know what they are. I wouldn't talk about it, but
yeah. I mean, at the end of the year, it gives you like a roundup for the year, and it tells you the actor you've watched the most and the director, and uh, it's usually Jason Statham. I think for me, so
hell yeah.
that's a plus.
I got to
By the
figure
way,
out if I'm going to take my kid to go see Shelter Mutiny. By the way, I don't know how bad that's going to be. I don't know how hard that
do
one's
it.
going to be. I got to see.
Just go for it. This week on social media, Statham unboxed a Mutiny action figure, and I
No
have to
way.
tell you, that is prime social media right
He
there.
must be so
Watching him,
thrilled to finally get an action figure of himself. That's fantastic.
yeah, it was really
I
cool.
just found out my brother still has the Rambo and Colonel Troutman figures that we bought when we were kids. Mine are long gone. He still
Like
has
the
those.
small ones
Yeah, yeah, the 8-inch
where,
action figures.
oh yeah, where Rambo had the missile launcher with the orange tip and the string that you
That
pulled.
is correct. He still has them.
Yes,
I am kind of sad at the fact that he still has them. I don't have mine, but yeah.
unbelievable. I'm sure I do, but I'm sure, like most things I still have, the parts are missing. That's usually what happens to me. So, uh, uh, sad. I could be a millionaire if I had all of those parts. Uh, well, we could do a whole episode on toys that we wish we still had, I think. But unless you have anything else you want to mention about Chef, we can move on to the head-to-head
Now
comparison.
let's go.
All right. It's so fun to compare these, and I'm really looking forward to discussing it. I'm going to throw you a curveball this week with one of these. I'll let you know ahead of
Okay.
time. And you can still answer the old question, but I called an audible and found one that I thought was a little more appropriate. Story effectiveness. Which one are you thinking does a better job with its story?
Man, that's a really hard question to answer. See, right out of the gate, story effectiveness. As I said, the thing about Jerry Maguire is that I almost marvel at the fact that it it doesn't feel like it should be effective at all. It just feels like a
Yeah.
mess, and yet it really works. So I feel like I'm going to say Jerry Maguire just because degree of difficulty is higher. That he's doing so much and has to hold it together, and he figures out a way to do it to create a through line that makes the movie work, even though it feels like it never should. I mean, Chef is very effective and it's great, but it's also simpler. It's an easier, straightforward movie to make. So I'm going Jerry Maguire just based on degree of difficulty.
I think we're switching personas right now, because I'm usually the one who looks at this from a technical aspect and gives my flowers based on which one performs technically better. But for me with this, I'm going Chef because it's so simple and because it's so like personal and intimate, I think it does. And don't get me wrong, Jerry Maguire, I love everything you said, that it's messy and comes together. I think it does a great job doing what it's supposed to do. But Chef just resonates with me more. And I think it resonates with me more because in the particular lies the universal. And some of the things in it that Carl goes through, specifically around creativity, which I don't think is really as much of a thing with Jerry Maguire, really resonate with me. And I think people find as they get older that, there's like a fulfillment that they're missing. And it's not necessarily because they don't have those like personal relationships, but it's an internal thing. And just because Chef resonates with me so much, again, taking nothing away from Jerry Maguire, I'm going to go with Chef. All right. Characters. Both have great characters.
Yeah, you know what? I gotta go Jerry Maguire on this one too. Just because the character of Jerry and the character of Rod Tidwell are so great and kind of nuanced, and their relationship is wonderful. I'm gonna have to go Jerry Maguire on this one.
I agree completely. I think they're so dynamic. On their own, each of them are sensational, but when they're together, it's really wonderful to watch. And maybe not so much Jerry, but watching Rod with his family is like, that's probably aspirational for Jerry. And there's
Yeah,
such
exactly
a
what it is.
depth to
And
that.
by the way, we forgot to shout out Regina King, who is really
Yeah,
great. Yeah, she's just another one of these.
always.
Yeah, she just grinded for years and years and years. Finally got her Oscar years later, but she's always just been a person that when she's on screen, you enjoy watching her. I found out that Janet Jackson was actually up for this part. She was originally up for the role
Oh,
and was almost cast. I think she had
that's right.
I think she had to
remember
pull
reading
out for a scheduling conflict, and Regina King steps in. So I'm gonna make sure we don't forget her.
Oh, interesting. One more thing I forgot to mention since you mentioned a musician. Rod Tidwell's dance in the end zone at the end was choreographed by Paula Abdul.
Yes, who I believe he was a backup dancer for at one point.
Really?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Cuban and Jr. was a backup dancer for Paul Abdul. I know he did. I know he danced at the Olympics in '84 with Lionel Richie. I know that for a fact. But I feel like I read somewhere that he actually was a backup dancer for Paul Abdul. Maybe I'm crazy. Let's just believe that to be
Well, it
true.
sounds to me like some of those choices, like Snow Dogs and the things beyond that, maybe were more in line with what he actually does career-wise if he's dancing with Lionel Richie.
Maybe
I don't know.
he was a breakdancer. You got to go where the work is.
Wow, that's amazing. All right, this is where the curveball comes in. We usually ask about tone and consistency, but I think it's more appropriate to ask which one handles the theme of our throwdown better. And the theme this week is kind of like reinvention, forced reinvention.
Huh. I think that Chef. I actually like the arc in Chef a little more. Again, I think because Jerry Maguire has so many other things going on, it's a more satisfying story because you're juggling a lot of things, which I enjoy. But if we're going strictly on the evolution of the character, I think that Chef is more satisfying in that regard because it spends a lot more time on the nuanced details of what he's doing, and you really get to see his passion come back, and I really like that.
Yeah, I think it's less about, like I keep saying, I see them as internal and external, and it's more about finding inside of yourself that thing that's rewarding. Because with Jerry Maguire, what's rewarding is a successful career and ultimately being able to share that with someone. But there's something so personal about Carl and Chef that it's about finding out what matters, and what matters is that creative fulfillment. And I truly believe that whether you think you're a creative or not, like everybody is, and that rears itself in different ways in everyone. But I think, fulfillment for everyone comes through creativity, at least to some degree. And so watching him rediscover that and using that and having that enabled by this relationship with his son, which is also, the thing of utmost importance to him, is just beautiful and really speaks to that theme that we're talking about here. So yeah, I agree with you completely. Chef all the way. This one I think is fun because cultural staying power means different things to these films, and they both have a little bit of it. But which one do you think is more? On its surface, it seems that this answer is very simple, but I think there's a deeper
Yeah,
exploration.
there is, because the fact that the Chef show is still on Netflix, that they spun this off into like a reality show, which has had staying power, definitely adds a twist to it. Chef is certainly a little more in the zeitgeist than you would think a movie this small would be. Um, but it's hard to argue with a movie that's on some AFI top 100 lists, and a
Yeah,
movie that has three lines that are in the 100 most quoted lines in movie history. There's only like two other movies I think that made three entries into the list. So it's really hard not to say that Jerry Maguire doesn't have more of a cultural staying power. And for me personally, just on a side note, so Secret Garden, the Springsteen song that is
yeah.
kind of the linchpin song of the movie, was a song that had come out 2 years earlier. That Springsteen recorded it when he reunited the E Street Band, and it was on a greatest hits album that no one really heard. No one really knew the song, and Cameron Crowe plucked it out and put it into Jerry Maguire, and the song just blew up. So adding that into the mix as well, that it kind of caused an obscure song to get discovered and just blow up. So there's lots of things that Jerry Maguire had in terms of staying power. Supposedly, it also increased the number of people who became sports agents.
Really?
Isn't that funny that you would think that it would do the opposite, but it didn't.
Yeah.
It caused more people to want to be sports agents. So it has some tentacles that you wouldn't necessarily expect.
So was there a class of sports agents who were all about personal attention and having those relationships then?
I don't know if they
Doesn't
wanted
seem
to
like
be
it.
Bob Sugar or Jerry Maguire, but they wanted to be sports agents.
Interesting. Wow.
I mean,
That's
honestly, looking
bizarre.
at the sports landscape now, it certainly feels there's more Bob Sugar. So
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you mentioned Springsteen, because something we didn't talk about that maybe we should have is that, nobody marries soundtrack to film the way Cameron Crowe does. He's just so in that world, like in both worlds, and has such a unique gift for bringing the two together.
one more, hang on, one more interruption before we say that Chef is
Yeah.
great in terms of music. And you're right, it was really fun to listen to the Cuban stuff. But there's something specifically for you, which I forgot to mention. So, Wise Up by Amy Mann was originally written for Jerry Maguire. So there was a scene in the movie that she wrote it for. And when Cameron Crowe heard it in a rough demo, it was like an acoustic version, which he thought fit really well in the scene that he was doing. When she did the final version, it was a bigger song,
Piano,
it was more
yeah.
more orchestrated, and he decided it no longer fit the theme that he was trying to use it for. But Wise Up is actually on the Jerry Maguire soundtrack.
No kidding.
No kidding. But it didn't take off until PTA ends up using it for Magnolia a couple of years down the road. But that song was actually made around the time Jerry Maguire and Cameron Crowe loved it.
Man, there are so many sliding doors there, because Amy Mann did the whole soundtrack for Magnolia, and it's so, I mean, talk about, I guess saying Cameron Crowe is so unique in marrying the music to the film is disingenuous, because so many people do it. Scorsese does it, of course, but PTA and that film in particular, I mean, the writing was almost integrated between the songwriting and the script writing.
100%.
So the fact that Wise Up, and it's a pivotal scene in the film where everybody sings it. Like, I cannot imagine if that ended up in Jerry Maguire. Like, Magnolia would be a completely different film. That's amazing. I like, my mind is blown from that right now, because it's so important in what Magnolia becomes. Wow. I'm gonna have to sit with that later, and I really want to hear that version of it because I've never heard it. So, man, that's really interesting. But what I was gonna say quickly is that also the music in Chef, it does such a great job of like setting a mood for the scenes they're in and like the world they're inhabiting through a lot of it's Cuban, but you have the Gary Clark stuff in
Right. And at
Austin,
this
and you
point,
just
Gary
really get a
Clark
sense of place
Jr.
from it.
Yeah, and he was not necessarily well known at that time either. Gary Clark Jr. He was just kind of coming up, so they're definitely hitting some cultural touchstones of those areas that they go to, and I really love. It's like music and food specific to these areas.
Yeah, it's so cool. I actually have the Chef soundtrack because it's so just like of a place, and it really just like it's affecting. It's really well chosen. So you're going Jerry Maguire with cultural staying power, right?
I feel like I have to. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I have to as well, even though I will say the chef show is there. And I thought there was a chef show cookbook, but I guess there's not. But Favreau and Roy Choi actually opened a chain of chef pop-up restaurants for
Oh,
a
really?
while, and they were in conversations about making a permanent space. So it really had its time. I don't know, what happened there, or if it wasn't that much of a draw that it made sense to open like a brick and mortar store that was permanent. But yeah, it definitely had and has its place in the culture. But I mean, it's hard to deny show me the money, you know? Like, you don't have to have seen Jerry Maguire to be able to quote Jerry Maguire, and you have to have seen Chef to really get what the Chef show is all about and you know, what it means. So, yeah, I think it's hard to dispute Jerry Maguire. Uh, all right, well, we're pretty much in agreement there, but we did switch on story effectiveness, so that's okay. But yeah, we pretty much see eye to eye on all of these. Now we'll ask our 5 questions, the fun ones that we don't have to think about as much. Maybe we do, but here we go. Which film is more rewatchable?
Chef is more rewatchable.
Okay. Yeah.
Just because Jerry
I
Maguire
think
is
both
long.
are.
It's a long movie. It's like 220.
It is a long movie.
And some of the beats in it, once you watch it multiple times, really slow down. So you start to feel that length. And Chef is a very breezy movie, even though it's not that short.
Yeah.
It's like an hour and 50, but it's pretty breezy.
Chef has this magical way of being slow and lingering, but still moving quickly. It's really interesting because the pace is slow to my eye, but it is breezy. Like you don't mind the length of it, I guess. You don't recognize it. So I guess that's what I'm trying to say. And that's a credit to Favreau because that's great filmmaking. For me, yeah, I mean, look at my letterbox. I've watched Chef
Wow.
probably 50 times. I've
Yeah.
watched Jerry Maguire like 3 times. And, my metric for this is also like, which one would I own on physical media? And I would probably own Jerry Maguire. I never really thought about it, but in having watched it,
Oh,
I'm
I
going to
will
go
say
back
though,
to
I was
it.
able to dig this out, which I totally forgot that I even had.
You do own Jerry
I do own
Maguire.
Jerry
Okay.
Maguire. I bought the DVD
Well,
years. This is the original DVD, the
nice.
double disc special edition. So yeah,
Well, for me, I own Chef on Blu-ray, so
there you go.
that's but Jerry Maguire never enters my mind. So I do think I would like to build that Cameron Crowe library.
On a quick side note, are you aware of this group that's building a pyramid of Jerry Maguire VHS tapes?
Yes,
Okay, just we won't even get into it. People should just look it up. It's pretty crazy.
it is crazy. They should maybe build a pyramid of the ET video game. You know how that was like all dumped
Right.
in the landfill. Weird people out there, but I kind of love it. All right, would you want to hang out with anybody from either of these films?
You know what? This is one of the few times, unlike our previous movies, where I don't think I want to hang out
Yeah.
with anybody. I want to hang out with almost everybody in these movies.
Yeah. Yep.
I would love to hang out with Rod and his wife. I would like to hang out with Jerry. He seemed good. Dorothy seemed lovely. Ray is a
Just
good
not
kid.
Bob Sugar.
Yeah, not Bob Sugar. Right, that's fair. And not Jan Winter either. But
Yeah.
but yeah, and everybody in Chef, yeah, I could hang out with most of these people and I would be happy.
Not Riva, Dustin Hoffman's character though.
Even him, I like it. I told you I like a
Maybe.
cantankerous old man. I don't know. Outside, I wouldn't want him to be my boss, but he might be an okay hang.
I think we need to do an episode that's like a Hall of Fame for like cranky old men characters.
I'm down for it.
That would be a lot of fun to
Look,
to linger on
old
because we
broads
both
and
love them.
cranky old men are my favorite things. That's why Dorothy was 100% my favorite Golden Girl. Just put it out there.
Yeah. It's really a field we could explore and have a lot of deliberation because there's so many good ones. All right, we talked about this a little bit, but career peak or valley for anybody involved.
Yeah, it's not a career peak for anyone other than Cuba Gooding Jr., honestly. And maybe Jonathan Lipnicki. But everyone else has got more in the tank after this. Again, Cameron Crowe's peak is definitely Almost Famous, and Tom Cruise, who knows? But you could argue you could argue it's a peak for Tom Cruise because it's really, a moment in his career where everything that he's doing comes together, and I don't know if it ever comes together in this way again, where he gets to use all of his skills. He even gets to run at least once. That's important.
Well, that's funny you say that because he has a line to Dorothy where he says, "I'm not a runner," and I was thinking, you were absolutely a runner. You run in every film. That's what I was going to say. Is that it feels like the beginning of a decline for him, and I think Magnolia. I mean, I'm biased, but I think that's his best performance because it's so against type while also utilizing the charisma that he has. But you can see this kind of being like those 3 years, 96 to 99. And, Eyes Wide Shut is an arguable performance for him, but it's really the beginning of where he stops working with these auteurs and leans into the tentpole stuff. So not a peak, but it's peak adjacent, I think, for him. But, TBD, maybe this post Mission Impossible stuff is going to see a resurgence of that. I hope.
Yes.
If Digger is any indication, I don't know. I mean, it it feels very Doctor Strangelove to me, which I guess is a good thing, but we'll see where it goes. In R2, I don't know. All right. Which one of these films is Steven Spielberg directing?
He's directing Jerry Maguire. I mean, who are we kidding?
Interesting.
I just feel like the feel of Jerry Maguire, which at its heart is like a sappy romantic comedy, is more Spielberg than a scrappy chef movie. I think he could bring more to Jerry Maguire. It certainly wouldn't be the same kind of movie, but it checks a few more boxes, I think, in his wheelhouse.
Counterpoint, Chef has a great child actor and divorced parents.
Shit, you're right.
But maybe everything around those two things is not for Spielberg.
Well, so counterpoint. I mean, Jerry Maguire also has a wonderful child actor,
and I mean a single parent.
And
so
a single parent.
Yeah. Okay. Well, all right, you won me over. Yeah.
Was that? I think that part of it is definitely Spielberg, but I don't know. Yeah, I don't see him necessarily doing a chef movie. I don't know. I mean, not like he couldn't, but I don't know. It's not the vibe I get.
By the way, since you mentioned chef movies, before Favreau started on this, there was another script called Chef. And once this got into motion, the studio had to send a cease and desist on that. And eventually what that turned into was Burnt, the Bradley Cooper movie that ended up going to the Weinstein Company, but that was going to be called Chef. But that was in the works before the Favreau one. So I don't know how he got to copyright the name, but he did. So just that film is not worth watching. I'm glad this version of Chef is what
Yeah,
ended up on
it
screen.
did, and it did come up. We did talk about, at least I did, using Burnt with Chef because I'd never seen Burnt,
Yeah.
but you said it wasn't worth it, so we let it go.
Yeah, it's not great. Really less of a midlife crisis or like crisis of conscience and just kind of a bad guy reckoning for poor decisions throughout his life. All right. Would either film be better if you swapped lead actors?
No, no. Could I see Jon Favreau playing Jerry Maguire? No, no, I could not. Could I see Tom Cruise in the role of Chef? Yeah, 100%. He can play that role.
Really?
I think he could. I really do. I think it would be fun to see him play that role. Actually, kind of like a disinterested father, which you could probably pull off. Someone who's obsessive about something. We know he could do obsessive. Would he learn to cook? I honestly think that he could learn to cook
Yeah.
and then be a chef at a 5-star restaurant. Like that's
Yeah.
the level of commitment. He would put like 3 years into it. He could 100% do it. But not the other way around.
Yeah.
But it would be a
I don't know.
different movie. I mean, it wouldn't be the fun, scrappy, kind of enjoyable movie that Chef is. If Tom Cruise was in it, it would be a different kind of movie. But could he play the role? Yeah.
Yeah, there's one of the things that's great about Chef is that Favreau brings kind of a laid back energy to it.
Think
That
about Tom
is the
Cruise
opposite of
and
crazy
Cuba
intensity.
Gooding Jr. on a truck together making sandwiches. I would watch that movie.
I can't see it because all I see is those two characters and
I would watch it. I mean, not now,
Yeah.
but back then, I would definitely watch it.
Well, I definitely can't see like Lozamo as a, a wide receiver.
That's fair. Although, maybe he's got the attitude. He could also possibly make that work.
Man, I don't know.
Maybe. I don't know.
But I am thinking about Jerry Maguire on the phone yelling, "Show me the money," and Favreau yelling, "This cake is molten,"
Right.
and like seeing those swapped out. So maybe just in those scenes, like you could swap, and it would be maybe not better, but as good. But everything around that, yeah, I don't know, interesting, but not as good. So I think the casting was
I will grant you that.
what it should be. All right, let's move on to our online polling. Interesting this week. A lot of votes. If you have not followed us on social media, please do so. We're Movie Throwdown Pod. And, you can vote on these polls and tell us which one you think is better. What do you think won out this week?
It's a great. See, I've usually been wrong with this because I guess I don't know our audience, but I'm always thinking that more people will gravitate toward Jerry Maguire because it was just a bigger movie. But I would be pleasantly surprised to be proven wrong. But I think Jerry Maguire.
So Chef stayed in the lead for a long time, and it was big on Instagram and TikTok for some reason. Chef was like far ahead of Jerry Maguire. It was kind of neck and neck on YouTube. So I post two places on YouTube. I do a short with a poll on it. So if you're just scrolling through the shorts, and then I do like a written post. And yesterday alone, the written post got 30 Jerry Maguire votes. I don't know how it happened, but overnight, like Jerry Maguire just shot into the lead. So with a total of 56-30, Jerry Maguire won out kind of at the last minute, which is really interesting. I don't know what it says. I don't drill down on the analytics and like think about why people would vote the way they do, but I was really surprised to see Chef, just because of Jerry Maguire being so recognizable, being in the lead for so long. So yeah, it was interesting, but I thought it was going to take it. Sadly, it didn't. All right. That's everything. Let's announce our verdicts. Which film for you is the better reinvention film?
Yeah, I still very much have a soft spot for Cameron Crowe, so I feel like it's still Jerry Maguire for me.
All right. That makes sense. It's a great film. Cameron Crowe's awesome. Height of his powers.
You stand. You don't even have to say it. I know you love Chef. I get it. And you've won me. You have pulled me to the side, pulled me over to that side. I really like this movie, and you've definitely sold it on me. But Jerry Maguire still has a certain place in my heart. 90s Cameron Crowe still gets me. So
Yeah, it's a good place to be. And I'm right there with you, but yeah, it's no secret. Chef is like a very personal film to me, and uh, it'd be hard to find anything in this realm that we could put up against it that would take it away from me. So yeah, I'm going Chef. So we split on this week, and the internet is the tiebreaker. So Jerry Maguire's our champion. Excellent. A well won victory. I'd take nothing away from Jerry Maguire. I think it's a great film. Really happy to do this one. I had a lot of fun comparing these two and just watching them. What I'm really grateful for is that I got to like rediscover Cameron Crowe, because I kind of wrote him off a while back, and just watching this and seeing that connective tissue in his films. I mean, the only thing I've really watched is singles in the past few years. And I will say that film in particular, and because of his filmmaking, like changed my life in a lot of ways. I mean, I moved to Seattle literally because of that film, and it had a huge impact on me. So I was very happy to like rediscover Cameron Crowe this week. Yeah. So Cameron Crowe, Jerry Maguire, congratulations. Let's talk about next week's show. I was almost going to pitch to you that we could do the female version of this with Under the Tuscan Sun and Eat, Pray, Love, and which was a thing that you pitched to me that I think is great, but I thought, wouldn't it be fun to do them back to back? But maybe not. So instead,
it might be a little too much midlife crisis, but all
yeah. Well, I'm kind of having one myself,
right,
so I like
what
to
I mean. That's why it's too much.
Sit in to this. So instead of that, we're going to skew younger, and we're going to talk about a throwdown between tellings of Jane Austen's Emma. And the first film in the pairing is Amy Heckerling's Clueless from 1995. I didn't realize how close to Jerry Maguire that was. I thought it was a little earlier than that. So we'll see what those two films have in common in filmmaking in the mid-90s. But yeah, Clueless is going to go up against Autumn de Wilde's version of Emma with Anya Taylor-Joy from 2020. A film I have never seen and I have been wanting to watch, so I'm very excited to watch it. I didn't realize Callum Turner was in it. There are a lot of like hot young boys from right now in 2020 Emma. So that's going to be fun to watch those. Follow us on social media at Movie Throwdown Pod. Vote for which Emma you think is better. And then come back next week and join us as we talk through them and figure out who gets the Emma crown. So we will see you then. Thanks for joining us, and so long.